Today I want to talk a little bit about chain lubrication, specifically waxing your chain. And if you're watching this video, it's probably because you're either already using wax or you're thinking about switching to it. And thinking about switching to it is where I was a couple of years ago. I got interested in it because I think there was an article in Velo magazine. They had friction labs run some tests, and it turns out the coefficient of friction, the losses for running a wax chain are lower than pretty much any other lube. And that was a factor. It was something that got me interested in it and my friends, but it's really not the main reason I switched over. The biggest reason that I switched to waxing a chain is because of the reduced mess. It's just so much cleaner. When you've got any kind of liquid lube on your chain, anytime you touch it or load your bike into a car or do any maintenance, you just get gunk all over everything. It gets on your hands, it's on the cassette, it's on the kind of chain rings, and it's just a disaster in that sense. Running a wax chain is really nice because the chain is essentially dry and it really doesn't transfer much dirt to anything. So you can handle a wax chain, even one that's been ridden a bit, and it there's a little bit of dirt on it, but it doesn't make a huge mess of your hands and such. So that's just the number one thing that I like about it. But waxing, it's a little more steps involved, and there's some more equipment, and I'll kind of talk about that and hopefully share some tips and tricks that maybe you haven't thought of that might make it easier for you. But let's talk about chain wax just in general. So when I started out, I did what everybody does, which is you just use regular golf wax, paraffin. This is available at the grocery store. You can get this in the hardware section. It's used for canning mostly. People just use it to seal canned foods and such. And I got kind of interested in, can I improve it? And so I started looking at additives. And there's various things that you can add to wax or to any kind of lubricant to make it a little bit better, things that are dry lubes. So for instance, graphite is one thing that you can do. Graphite has the downside of being black, but it's a hexagonal structure. It's carbon in a hexagonal lattice, and it slides over itself nice and easily. Another thing that you can use is molybdenum disulfide, and that's another interesting material that forms kind of a flat sheet structure molecularly, and it has a lot of good properties as a dry lubricant. It actually is really tough under shear stress and under temperature. So that's another possibility. One thing that I actually looked into and started using was hexagonal boron nitride. And it's kind of cool stuff because, again, it forms a hexagonal structure. But it's kind of non-toxic. It's interesting to use it in cosmetics, so it's fairly safe. Now, I wouldn't recommend inhaling this stuff, but it's not super toxic. It's actually used in stuff that goes on your skin. And you can get it online. I actually bought this from a company called Derby Dust, I think on Amazon. And there's other sources too. You can get various different types and grades and amounts. This is a small container. I think this is 0.1 ounce, I think, or something like that. So it's a really small amount, but it's enough to add to your wax for a couple of seasons at least. I use this, and I've still got a good half a container left. So the upside of this is that it potentially reduces wear and maybe reduces friction a little bit. Downside is that because it is white, it does turn the wax and your chain, gives it kind of a white cast. So people did ask me, why is your chain white? If you take and add it to a little bit of alcohol, you can actually make something that can be used to kind of replenish the lube on your chain. So this is hexagonal boron nitride in isopropyl, just regular grocery store rubbing alcohol. And you can drip this on your chain. And I use this to refresh my chain when it had been waxed with the wax and hexagonal boron nitride mix. I'd go back and just apply this if the chain started getting noisy, and this will quiet it down again because you're basically replenishing that the hexagonal boron nitride dry lube layer, and it dries clean. But this will definitely make your chain turn white. More recently, I kind of got interested in trying this Molten Speed Wax. And this is from Molten Speed Wax LLC in Shoreview, Minnesota. And so what they've done is they've pre-mixed paraffin and, as far as I can tell, Teflon, PTFE, and molybdenum disulfide, which are both great lubricants that are turn up in a lot of wet lubes and such too. So it's pre-mixed, and you can buy this on Amazon. You can basically get a pound of it for about 20 bucks. Now, to give you an idea of what that means in terms of comparison to regular chain wax, this container of golf wax is a pound, and it's $3-ish, I think. So, you're looking at quite a bit more money. But then again, with chain wax, it lasts a long time. So probably half of this container will be what I'll use initially, and that'll be good for at least a season or two. So there you go. And how do we melt the wax? what I found initially when I started doing this was this little lunch crock. It was made by like the crock pot company, or I don't know who made it, but it was a little small crock pot that was designed for heating up lunches. Like you could put some soup or some stew in it, plug it in at work, and it would heat it up. And that thing worked great. It was like a very low cost way to do the wax melting. It's about 20 bucks, but it had some downsides too. It's cheaply made. It was also prone to tipping because just the design of the thing, it was not super stable. So it's always a little bit of a disaster trying to move it around with the handle and everything. So recently I thought, let's look and see if there's a better way to do this. So you can use a double boiler on your stove, but that's a little bit scary to me because you know, you've got, first of all, you're doing stuff indoors, and that can be a problem if you're married or you got, you know, a girlfriend or spouse. They're not going to love the fact that you're, you know, melting wax and mixing chains on the stove. So let's think about other options for melting wax that are dedicated, so that you don't have to, you know, tie up the kitchen. So, you know, it's funny nowadays, we got the internet. So if you think, okay, maybe there's something out there that'd be a good solution for this, you can pretty much find it. So what there is wax melting pots for cosmetics. This is hair removal wax melting equipment, and this is something I found on Amazon. It's the right size and you know, capacity for doing chains, and it's not very expensive. I think this was around 30 bucks or so. And what I found is that there's a couple of different options for these guys. This one actually has a little LCD display, and it seems like it's a little bit better quality. You can set the temperature, which is good because you don't want it super hot. You also need to get it up to about maybe 120 degrees or so to really melt the wax. Reading the reviews for some of these things, it seemed like some of them were prone to melting down and catching on fire. So, you know, if you go to buy something, look at the reviews and look and see if it's quality or if it's junk, because what you don't want to have is something that you plug in, put a bunch of flammable paraffin in, and then have the thing catch on fire and burn your house down. So, you know, be careful. And for goodness sakes, you know, first time you run one of these things, do it where you can keep an eye on it. Don't just let it run. Once you start to trust it, yeah, you can kind of let it melt on its own, but you kind of want to keep an eye on it. So what's in here? In this guy. First of all, this particular one comes with some hair removal wax. So as a cyclist, I don't know, maybe that's a bonus. But we'll get that out of the way. And then here's the actual warmer. It comes with a little manual. And some sticks for applying wax. And then here it is. So you can see it's not very big. It's small. This is about the right size because you don't want gigantic volumes, and you just have to use a lot of wax. So what you want is something that's about 4 inches in diameter in terms of the container that you're actually going to put the wax and chain in. And this is about the right size. So, like I say, adjustable temperature display. It's got a nice wide base, so it's not going to be prone to tipping over. And then one thing that I think is kind of cool about this one is that the actual wax pot, if I can get this out of the bag here and show you, actually has its own little handle. So, you know, when it comes time to empty this thing or clean it, it comes out easy. If you want to dump it, which you do eventually have to do when the wax starts to get dirty. But in the meantime, it just sits there and you can drop the chain in to the wax and wax your chain. So next step is I'm going to fire this thing up and hopefully do a little time lapse of the wax melting, and then we'll proceed to actually waxing the chain. This is a brand new Dura Ace 11-speed chain. Obviously normally I'd be starting with a chain that came off a bike, but in this case this is a new chain. I'm going to put it on my bike today. And when you get a new chain, they come coated in some heavy grease that some people say is a really good lubricant. I don't know. If I'm going to use wax, I take that lube off the chain first thing. And I could size this chain before I take the lube off, but that would just mean getting my hands all greasy and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this thing, and then I'm going to size it to fit my bike. So there it is. Anyway, I'll put that aside for now, because what I want to talk about is how do I clean the chain. I use mineral spirits, and I keep it in a little Tupperware container. Actually, it's a Rubbermaid, I guess. And it evaporates from here a little bit. There's a little bit of loss from this container. But in general, the stuff stays pretty good, and you can use this multiple times. Now you can see that there's some crud in the bottom of the container there, and that's dirt that came off my old chain last time I cleaned it. So in order to keep that from getting onto the new chain, what I do is I basically decant the mineral spirits into another container very carefully. And this is always a little bit of a messy process. I may spill some of my background material here, but we'll see. So basically, you get a little bit of the stuff in there, some lighter stuff's going to pour in, but you can see the majority of the metal filings and dirt and everything stayed in the container. So then what I do, pardon me for the background noise here, take a paper towel and go wipe all that stuff out of there, right? You can see all that. That's basically metal filings that came off my old chain last time I cleaned it, right? And I can give the container a little bit of a cleaning around the edge here. All right, so now we've got a nice clean starting point. And I can actually go in and return the remaining mineral spirits back to my little Rubbermaid container. So it comes in a bag, because it is covered in grease. We'll open that up. I hope I'm staying in frame here while I do this. I'm kind of watching what I'm doing and not watching the screen. Alright, so there's the chain. Alright, and it is slick. It's got grease all over it. You can see there's that like Cosmoline or packing grease. And I think the Sheldon Brown website says that it's a really good lubricant, but I'm sure it is, but it's also messy as heck. So what I do, I'm going to go out of frame a little second here, and I'm going to straighten this chain out. Take all the kinks out of it and get it into a U shape here. Alright, so now I've got the chain all laid out flat basically in a U. It's hard to tell because I've got it folded up here so it'll fit on camera. But I take the two loose ends on this guy, and there's different ways of doing this, but what I do is I just take a regular twist tie and I run it through those two links, twist this guy off, right, and now I've got a way to grab that chain back out of here, and it also keeps it from tangling. Sorry for bumping the camera. Alright, so get this chain dropped into the mineral spirits, and like I say, there's always a little bit of loss from this container. It's not 100% sealed against the mineral spirits. So basically here's my mineral spirits, and I'm just going to top this off. So open the container here, and then I basically just add enough to cover the chain. So there you have it. Alright, then it's just a matter of kind of closing this up, shake it around a little bit, and it's hard to show you the side view, but basically, you know, you can see that hard to see in there, but that mineral spirits gets dark in a hurry. Now this is a brand new chain, so there's not much to come off of it, but on a chain that's been used, you'll get a lot of black stuff coming off there, and that's just all the metal filings and dirt and dust that's collected on your chain over time. So now let that sit, and then in a little bit come back, and then we'll proceed with the waxing. So the nice thing about this is that if you start cleaning the chain while you're getting your wax ready to go, you really don't have to wait. You know, you just let this soak, and that mineral spirits will actually dissolve any old paraffin that's on the chain. It does a great job. So that's how I clean the chain. Here's my new crock pot for melting wax. It's actually not a crock pot. It's a cosmetic hair removal wax warmer. And this one's actually made by Lavani, I think is the name of the company. I don't know if I'll take some other pictures here so you can see the front of the thing, but it's Lavany. Got it on Amazon. So I was trying to figure out how much wax to put in this. You know, because it's a little hard to judge until you actually get the stuff melted and put the chain in there. But I was comparing the size between the insert of my old lunch warmer crock pot and this new thing, and they're almost identical. In fact, this is a little bit smaller diameter, so I think I can get by with about a ½ pound of wax, which is what I used to use in the past. So, got my Molten Speed Wax here. I'm gonna open this guy up and add about half the container. And if I get this level wrong, I can always add a little bit more later. Honestly, that right there, that's less than half. And I think that's going to be plenty to do it. We'll see how that goes. Maybe a little more. So this thing is doing a great job melting the wax. It shows the temperature of the actual contents when it's running. It's like right now it's in a cooling phase, and then it's going to turn on when it's about 200. Now it's heating. And when you adjust the dial on the front, then it shows you the set point. Alright, so the wax is all thoroughly melted now. I'm just going to take a look in here and show you what it looks like. So I've got one of the stir sticks that came with the wax melter. And when you look at this, you can see that there's definitely stuff suspended in the wax. So that's the molybdenum disulfide and the PTFE. So it's important to stir this stuff, I think, before the chain goes in. Anything you add to the wax, it doesn't dissolve, it's going to tend to settle to the bottom, so you want to agitate before you put the chain in, and then probably while the chain is in there, if you can kind of stir it around a little bit, that helps get the stuff back into kind of an emulsion to coat the chain evenly. Alright, time to put the chain in the wax. I actually dialed this back temperature-wise quite a bit. The instructions on the Molten Speed Wax say 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which seems excessive to me, given the paraffin melts around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. 200 is probably fine, it just seems like it's going to lead to you getting burned, and I'm not a fan of that, so I dialed it back to 135, and it's very liquid. I can show you, it's definitely like absolutely fluid. Give this a little stir here to get everything kind of mixed up nicely. And then drop in my chain. Now this chain came out of the mineral spirits, and I dried it off, basically kind of wiped it down. And if you let it air dry for a little bit, the mineral spirits will evaporate on their own. But what I do is I just kind of layer the chain in there, trying not to get it kinked or curled around itself. It's a little hard to see on camera here, but basically I want to get it all tucked in there, but not forming, you know, loops or kinks that are going to be difficult to deal with later when it comes time to take it out. And the chain's cold, so, you know, I went in there and it kind of definitely pulled some of the heat out of the wax. So it's kind of setting up. Maybe that's an advantage to having the wax hotter, I don't know. What I'm going to do is just let it kind of stew and let the warmer heat everything up. But I may dial the temperature up a little bit, we'll see. Maybe I'll take it up to, you know, 150, 160, somewhere in there. Because, yeah, this is definitely a little too cool. Okay, so it's kind of congealing on me. I'll heat this up a little bit. Alright, so my wax is fully melted again here. It's up at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was using a wooden stir stick earlier that came with the wax warmer, but the truth is I actually like to use something stiffer and less springy and less paddle-shaped to do this, because I find that it's less likely to flick wax all over the place. Anything that's springy and kind of flat, it's great for stirring, but then when you go to move the chain around, it wants to release and just flick stuff all over the place. So what this is just an aluminum chopstick, and it works really great for just getting in there and moving the chain around. And I do this because two reasons. One, it gets anything that's in the wax, like any additives, get kind of stirred up and distributed into the chain. And also it moves all the links around, which means that any air bubbles or pockets of solvent, whatever, are going to tend to get disturbed, and it lets the wax get in between the links. So, you know, I'm just kind of pushing the chain around in there. If you use pure paraffin, you can see the chain, it's like it's in water, but because this is the Molten Speed Wax, the additives are kind of making it cloudy. And it's interesting too, when I let this sit, you can actually start to see the chain more clearly. So definitely you want to stir the stuff around a little bit. So I'm just going to let that kind of... And see, the nice thing about an aluminum chopstick too is that it warms up and then the wax doesn't want to stick to it. With the wooden stir stick, the wax sticks all over the place and it wants to turn into a candle. So, so if you can find something like this really works well. I think any kind of little metal rod would work very nicely for this. Something stiff. Alright, so the chain's been in the wax for a little bit now, and I feel like it's pretty well saturated, so now it's time to take it out. And you can see I've got my warmer set up here, and I also have a place to hang the chain up once it comes out. Now you can do a lot of things here. If you're in a garage, you can hang something from your garage door rail, like an S-hook or an old piece of coat hanger or whatever. Basically, you just want something to hang the chain on while it cools down. since I'm not in the garage and I'm in the kitchen right now, what I've done is I've taken one of my aluminum chopsticks and I've just got basically a sandbag on to hold it in place here. And I'm going to use my other chopstick to fish the chain out. And if you remember earlier, I put a twist tie through one end of the chain. This is easier to do with pure paraffin because you can kind of see what you're doing. In this case, I kind of can't see what I'm doing, so it's a little tricky. Alright, now this is the messy part of this whole process. And what you can't see off camera is that I've got a piece of cardboard down on the floor because this will drip. And what I do is I let it just kind of drip into the pot for a little bit. Try not to make a mess. Just let as much of the wax drain off as I can. Now, I've done different things with this in the past. The Molten Speed Wax instructions say not to wipe down the chain. I kind of understand that. Their reasoning is that it provides some corrosion protection on the side plates and on the sides of the chain, but you will have more hardened wax come off the chain if you do that, compared to giving it a wipe down. And so I'm going to do it the way they say. I'm just going to let it sit and cool down like that. Now when this gets all cool, it's going to be, you know, in a solid, it's going to be like a rod because the wax sets up in the links and everything. So when you get done, you definitely have to kind of flex all the links and get it loosened up again. If you wipe it down while it's cooling, A, there's less wax that flings off on your bike, and B, it's you don't have to go through that whole process of busting up all those little links. But you also have less wax on the chain. So, you know, which one's better? I don't know. I've done it both ways, and for a long time I just kind of wiped the chain down when I got done because it's a little bit less mess and doesn't seem to hurt anything. But I'm going to go ahead and go with the instructions that they provide and let it just harden up like this. Here's my chain after applying the Molten Speed Wax. Again, this is a brand new Dura-Ace 11-speed chain. It's interesting, I found that new chains tend to be a little more flexible after they come out of the wax than used chains. I think used chains, the links loosen up a little bit, and more wax actually gets in between the link plates and causes it to be stiffer when it comes out of the wax. So as you can see, I mean, it's like a one-piece kind of thing, right? It's real stiff, and so you have to go through and you know, break up all these links in order to, you know, get it on the bike. And that's in the Molten Speed Wax instructions too. They talk about that. I think in general, having done this now, I did two chains actually, which you didn't see in the video earlier, but did another chain, put it on the bike, one of my other bikes, and I think I still kind of prefer to wipe the chain down after waxing because I don't know if you can see clearly or not here, but there's quite a bit of wax that is pooled on what ends up being the lower end of the links, and that's just all going to scrape off on the bike when you're riding. And honestly, I mean, you know, part of the reason for leaving the wax on there is that you get more on the side plates, which might help with shifting and certainly probably helps with corrosion protection. But I don't know, when you wipe it down, you really are not, it's not like you're sterilizing it and getting every bit of wax off. You're just taking off the excess, the stuff that's kind of pooling. And it also eliminates a lot of this stiffness and rigidity of the chain after waxing. So I think in the future I'll probably just give the chains a wipe down with you know, with a shop rag or whatever. So thank you very much for watching all that. I know it was kind of long, but I hope I shared some information that you perhaps hadn't seen before, maybe concerning additives that you could put in regular Gulf wax for your chain. And the Molten Speed Wax itself too is a good option if you're looking for an off-the-shelf solution. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'd also love to hear your comments. I'm always looking for suggestions on future topics or questions I can answer or things I can improve. And thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. Have a good day.